decent furniture and some paintings on the wall, and it's not all gray, carpet, ceiling, and walls, then you can kind of think they might have hired some people that can do something. But when you walk into one of those places where it's gray all around, you just kind of think, gee, they didn't spend a whole lot of money here. I shouldn't expect a whole lot. And so when you have some of these discussions with people, it really depends on what that environment is as to what you're going to recommend in the solution for them for security. Certainly something where, I'm working with a government agency that deals with classified information has a whole different level of approach to security than the ones who have wireless guest, wireless password.
Why is it that security groups are decoupled from the roles? Why aren't the permissions assigned directly to the roles?
One of the things that I've seen is that there is a great concern for separation of duties at a lot of customers, where the security team kind of operates off to themselves and they kind of stand away from the rest of the employees, so there's not even any kind of suggestion that they're going to help someone to get access to information that they shouldn't have access to. And they usually follow regulations very closely, all their processes that are defined, and say, we have to go through this. I know that you need this today, but the regulations or the process says that you have to fill out this request. It has to go to your manager. Your manager has to approve it, and then their manager has to approve it, and then it comes back to me, and then I give you the access to the system. So I think that there's also the concern that I think security is one of those things, a necessary evil sometimes, but it's also the kind of thing where if the company doesn't understand the value of security, security kind of creates a mythos around itself, so that people are afraid of security, and they know that there's value in security because the security people say that there's value in security, even when they themselves don't understand it. And so for a lot of different reasons, the security people create these auras around themselves to keep things going and do the right things, which we all know that they should be doing. But sometimes, companies will say, do I really need to have this person who deals with checking all of my security access records and looks for patterns and manages that software that does that? Do I really need that? And we all know that they do in today's day and age. But a lot of times it's not completely evident to people, especially some executives who came from another part of the company, not IT, who have to deal with that and are being charged for it. We're moving into kind of the maturity level in a lot of corporate customers that I'm seeing of doing chargebacks for everything. And so there is a cost associated with each person and all of their user IDs that have to be created, and account maintenance, things like that. A lot of places have annual validation of accounts. Do you still require access to this resource? All of those kinds of things. And so there's a cost associated with that, and they are starting to recharge people for that. And so we're starting to see people questioning, what is this really worth? And the challenge will be to see if the security people step up to it and have all the right answers and can validate with information that shows what their value to in the corporate equation is.
Any other questions?
New hires that you get, where are areas that you think that students, not necessarily those from Purdue, but from wherever, are well prepared for a career within IBM, and where they're probably lacking in their education?
I think, for the most part, when IBM looks at a school, like we look at Purdue, and Purdue is actually a top-tier school for IBM. We think very highly of Purdue. It's what we call a blue school, and because IBM's big blue. So we have the blue schools, and we have our non-blue schools. And Purdue is definitely a blue school. But we look at it, and we know the curriculum and what the integrity of the university is, and we make investments in things like donating computer labs to Purdue and things like that. So we recognize that there's a partnership between IBM and a university, that we try to create these relationships and get something both ways from this. But what we look at when we look at Purdue is, okay, now we know it's a blue school, but what do I care about from the students? And I think a lot of the challenges, things we look at, are for people who understand that they're not always going to be told what they need to do. And I think Purdue does a pretty good job of that. I've talked to a lot of students who told me about how they were given an assignment. It was kind of vague, and they kind of knew what they were supposed to come up with, but not a whole lot of information in the middle. And it's like that in life and in the work field in IBM. They tell you that they need to have their LDAP integrated. Well, they don't tell you all the other things that go along with that. And you have to have the knowledge or to get that from other people and be motivated so that when you deliver what it is that you're supposed to be delivering, it is a complete solution. And 3 weeks later, somebody's going to come back to you and say, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And we also look for students who are thinkers and troubleshooters that can find their way out of a problem using resources that we have. Number one resource that I use probably 100 times a day is Google, just to find information about what's going on. And I look for problems that other people have had where other people have this situation. I'm dealing with kind of one-off situations all the time where customer has even AIX, which is an IBM operating system, and they have used there's a security package from Sweden, and I don't remember exactly the name of it, but it goes on top of AIX, and I knew almost nothing about it, never even had heard of it when I went there, and I couldn't install the product because of the security package. So I had to go out and Google it and find out what was going on. First, I wasn't convinced it existed because I couldn't find it in Google, because if it doesn't exist in Google, it doesn't exist. But people who can do that and can be very self-reliant and form networks. When you're working with people, this experience that you have at school where you have people in your classes and you get to know them, you eventually learn to cultivate that into professional relationships. And the social networking tools that are out there, the Facebook and the LinkedIn and all of those things, become ways that you are productive at doing things without consuming company resources necessarily. We rely on each other. We have our colleagues from other companies, we have them from around the world, from academia, wherever that we work with, to find the answers to these solutions and provide things without necessarily consuming all of IBM's resources on one little tiny problem. And so when we find students that are like that, it becomes something that really stands out. In fact, we found, I'm kind of like one of the poster children for this kind of an employee myself, and I recruited someone else from Purdue who was a lot like me. And everybody has said every time I go, have you found another you yet? My manager has asked me many times to clone myself because they desperately need more of me. And so every time I come to campus, I'm constantly looking for people with all those kinds of skills to be able to jump into this situation. For instance, one of the things they have, whenever you're associated with a new technology, they always say there's a learning curve. And that learning curve can be very steep. And with the Maximo product, they say it's about 18 months. So before IBM really expects that you're going to be very productive with the product, it's about 18 months of you doing training classes, shadowing people, maybe doing simple implementations and things. And I did it in like 6 months. And so that's the kind of thing that we want to see, is people who will dig in and have the tenacity to learn what they don't know and to go forward. It's kind of one thing when I see employees and candidates that we're looking at where there are people that I just don't think have any other gumption to do anything other than, okay, I'm going to work till 5 o'clock and then I'm going home and I'm not going to think about this anymore until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. All the time I'm thinking about what's going on, the problems that I'm facing every day. And so, like, I don't know, I can't tell you how many times, like in the shower in the morning after I've had a good night's sleep, suddenly I come to that aha moment and I'm like, I know exactly how to fix the problem that we're facing. And that's the kind of students that IBM would